Welcome to 40 Days in His Presence. Today is day 31, and I'm reading from Matthew chapter 7 and verse 1. Judge not, that you be not judged. Mary had been judged by others all her life. When she looked at herself, she was always filled with shame and despair. After all, if everyone else thought that she was worthless, she really must not be the princess she had hoped to be. As she grew older, she entered the life of prostitution and was fast running down a course that would eventually end in disaster. The law of the land said that adultery was punishable by death, to die by stoning. She knew the man she was with was married, but somehow she thought that she had already reached the bottom and could not be viewed as any lower than what she was. Then the unimaginable happened. She was caught red-handed. The man she was with had conspired with the authorities, and when the time was right, they burst in and dragged her out of the house. Insult upon insult they hurled upon her as she was dragged into the street. They intended to take her to the prophet, that self-proclaimed teacher whom they hated so much. They would challenge him with her sin and hopefully secure the ruin of two people for the crime of one. As they dragged her to the temple where Jesus was teaching, they threw her uncovered body before him and said, "Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what do you say, prophet?" This they said, testing him, that they might have something of which to accuse him. You see, by presenting this woman's fate to the decision of Jesus, they put him in an almost impossible position. Roman law stated that only the Roman government had the right to sentence a person to death. But Jewish law said that anyone who had committed adultery must be stoned by the community. If Jesus said, "Go ahead and stone her," he would be guilty of breaking the Roman law, and they would bring him before Roman authorities. But if Jesus said, "Leave her alone," they would accuse him of breaking the law of Moses given by God. But Jesus saw through their plan and simply bent down and began to write in the ground words which cut to the very heart of those who read them. It is possible that Jesus was writing the sins of those men. The Jews, though, pressed their question. John 8, verses 7 through 8. So when they continued asking him, he raised himself up and said to them, "He who is without sin among you, let him throw a stone at her first." And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. Silence came over the entire multitude as they stared incredulous at Jesus. He had spoken truth so plainly that neither by Roman nor Jewish law could they incriminate or condemn him. He had spoken in such a way that light pierced their own souls and their conscience was awakened. The guilt of their own sins and the imperfections of their own life made the matter plain. They had no right to judge this woman, for they themselves were guilty before God. Then those who heard it, being convinced by their conscience, went out one by one, beginning with the oldest, even to the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. Here, Jesus showed through example that we are not to judge others, because in judging others, we incriminate ourselves. Matthew 7 and verse 1. Judge not, that you be not judged. Now Jesus was left alone with this woman. He alone was perfect, sinless. He alone was worthy to pass condemnation upon her. And thinking that her doom would now come to pass, the woman buried her face in her hands and waited for her death. When Jesus had raised himself up and saw no one but the woman, he said to her, "Woman, where are those accusers of yours? Has no one condemned you?" She raised up and said, "No one, Lord." And then Jesus said to her, "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." The only one worthy of condemning her chose a redemptive course, and instead of condemning her, bid her to go and sin no more. Jesus, our great example, showed by his conduct how we are to treat every individual who is guilty, even if we think that we are perfect. Even when we are justified in our condemnation of others, Christ bids us to seek a higher path, an unexpected path. John 3, verse 17. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. Today, as we open our devotional to day 31, let us consider the response of Jesus to those who are guilty and choose a non-condemning, non-judging attitude. Let the attitude of Jesus be your attitude, and once more pray with Jesus for the salvation of those you know need his mercy. Let's begin.